Long time no see, gamers. I have returned with yet another Helluverse creation. Today's doll is a commission from a good friend of mine who has paid me well in ghost concert tickets. Thank you for that. It took me a while to make this doll. It's still not completely done, but that part is for a separate video. So I do apologize for the wait, and also the wait for Stolas's print files. I have not been very productive in that department at all. But yes, today I have made the one and only Lucifer from HAZBIN Hotel. So I start off as usual by sculpting the body and the faces, which my friend had requested a few different faceplates to choose from, so I sculpt those and I head off to the printer to print them. I use ABS resin in white and I print the pieces in 4 sessions, I think? I don't know. And some quick ASMR.
With the McDonald's and the Pentagon. Usually put QUITAII on. This is the food every wrestler. So the story that the work is so important. Working at the Pentagon. Working at the Pentagon.
I have no words, honestly.
Bitch, you hit the Pentagon!
The immediate switch to ASMR is sending me. Anyway, I then washed the pieces and now I'm curing them.
Ew!
Again, I don't know. After all that, I sand all the parts and now I have to paint all of the pieces that are not white. Hey! Hey! Immediately a cat hair. Starting with the arms and the hands. Then I work on his shoe bases and a little sneak peek for his demon form that I'll be showing in the next video. And I also paint him a little duck that was also requested. Painting this duck was so tedious, but it's so cute and I think it's 100% worth it. Hey, can I help you? F***ass duck. I did save you guys the pain of watching me add magnets to his back, which will be for his wings for his demon form, which I have not made yet, because this was so frustrating and I was covered in super glue. So extermination is entertainment. Banana guitar solo, yeah. After my guitar solo, I add the magnets for his neck and face plates, his feet and ankle joints, his hand joints and the duck, and lastly his hands. And after sealing everything, here are all the finished painted pieces. The duck, the apple for his cane, his hands, and his shoe bases. And now it's finally time to string the doll. Also, look at what my friend got me. To string the doll, I start off by taking elastic that's a little bit smaller than the width of the arms and pulling it through the armholes of the torso, and then beating the arms on, starting with the shoulders, then the elbow joints, forearms, and then taking my tweezers to hold the elastic so I can test the arms before finally hooking on the wrist joints. Ow. It's looking good so far. And he can hold his duck. I get to string this and not have to worry about having to figure out how to make some ass bird legs stand up. Let's go. That's another win for the OG. To string the rest of the body, I start by threading it through the neck plate, upper torso, middle torso, and then through each leg hole in the hips. Then, like the arms, I bead on the legs starting with the hip joints, thighs, knees and shins, and finishing it off by hooking on the ankle joints. Oh my god, he stands! Oh my god, he stands! He can stand and pose, and his face clicks on perfectly. Now he's ready for a wig, face, and clothes. So let's start with the wig. I'm really not great at wigs. I've never been good at wigs, so bear with me as I try to make this. But I start off by gluing the wefts around the perimeter of the wig cap in the opposite direction that the hair is gonna go for his pompadour hairstyle. Then I glue the wefts on the back straight down. I just go around the wig and fill it in, and I really don't know how to explain what I'm doing. I section off the curly sideburns and start cutting the hair in the back and work my way up. I trim the hair into shape, and this whole styling process is just a bunch of brushing and cutting and hairspray and teasing and seeing what works. It's pretty much the same process as the hair I did for Stolas, but with a widow's peak hairline and in the color blonde. I did eventually get it looking how I wanted. It's not perfect, but here's how it turned out. Moving on to the eyes. I start the eyes by mixing some yellow and white resin dye into my resin and filling up my eye molds. When they're done curing, I fill in that empty space just a little bit and cure it again, and I repeat that process for the second pair of eyes. Then I take some red acrylic paint and I paint tiny ovals in the center of the eyes for his pupils. I then top off the eyes with clear resin to make a dome, and his eyes are done. And now it's time for the part that I was most excited for. His face up! I was really nervous, so I started out with his faceplate that I didn't think would be used as often. I first sketch out his eyeliner and eyebrows with a pencil. Then, using that same pencil and a brush, I fill in the shadows of his mouth and teeth. I then use my watercolor pencil and color in his cheeks. And then I go over my sketch lines with black acrylic paint. Finally, I use a purple pencil to color in his eyeshadow, and I top it off with some highlighter, and his first face is finished! I do the same process for his regular face, except I'm adding more eyeshadow. Gotta make sure bro's got his glam. And his main face is done. Now it's time to add his eyes. Also, sneak peek for his demon form. I do a quick transition, and the eyes are in place. I'm really proud of how his face has turned out, and I think he looks so freaking cool. The final step for his face is to gloss his teeth, and it's time for his clothes. Say hi from YouTube. My bad. So I couldn't find striped fabric in the size and color that I needed for the vest of Lucifer's outfit, so I found this hack online where I can iron freezer paper onto cotton fabric and print the pattern on a regular printer so I can make custom fabric. Here in this clip, I'm printing the fabric that I need for the cuff of his coat sleeves. To make the vest, I first take my printed fabric and cut out my pattern pieces, and then I sew the two back pieces together, which I do this instead of cutting out a back panel because the finished vest will fit better this way. I then sew the darts that are on the two front pieces, which were kind of hard to sew, but I got it to work. After, I pin the front panels to the back, good sides in, and sew along the sides. I then iron the bottom over so I can sew the hem before continuing. Next, I cut notches around the armholes and glue them down so the fabric looks nicer and doesn't fray. I also do this to the neckline and the front part of the vest. After, I just quickly sew the shoulders together and the vest is almost done, and it fits perfectly. Later in the video, I do replace this Velcro with some blue tack, because I think the Velcro was just too bulky for this, but now it's time to actually finish off the vest. I make his little chain buttons in the same way that I made the buttons for Stolas, and I just paint some glittery nail polish onto foil paper, and then make some clear resin gems. I glue them onto the foil paper, and as you can see, I made just enough for this chain and the chains on his coat for later. Then I just cut them out, take an old gold necklace that I found, and I glue the end to one of the buttons. Dr. Pepper, Dr. Pepper. I glue the one button to the vest on the side of the fabric that stays on top of the other. I don't know how to explain it. And then I cut the chain to length and glue the other button on along with a magnet. And I also glue a magnet to the inside of the vest. I should have used blue tack for this, but it's too late now. I've already glued the magnets. And the vest is finished. I did add a little white fabric panel inside the vest so it looks like he has a shirt on underneath without adding any bulk. I also don't know why I didn't demonstrate using the button here. Question mark? Next on the agenda, his pants. I made a funky little pattern for his pants so it gives the bottom that poofiness that he has, and I think I kind of accomplished it. And also, I don't have to work around any fuck-ass bird legs this time. But anyways, to begin, I take all 4 of my pattern pieces that I already cut out and sew the darts. After, I take my 2 front pieces and sew the crotch seam, good sides in. I do the same thing to the back, but only this tiny little slivers so that I have enough room to add a Velcro for the closure. I then take my front and back panels, place them together right sides in, and sew along the outside seams. And then I sew from foot to foot along the crotch seam to close the pants. Then I just turn them right side out and try them onto the doll. Next, I just glue the bottom hem over for each pant leg. Then I glue a cleaned up fabric strip onto the waistband of the pants to make it look nice. Giving an old man gonorrhea is crazy work. Hey, I don't know the context of that. I believe we were watching House MD. Anyways, to finish off the pants, I just glue the Velcro closure and they're done! Moving on, in my desperate attempt to procrastinate making Lucifer's tailcoat, I decided to work on a few of his accessories instead. Starting off with his rings, I make 2 of them to go on his regular hands and his demon form hands. And to make them, I take the same foil paper that I used for the buttons and fold it over twice, very thin. And then I cut the excess and cut it to length. I test the size and then repeat that process for the second ring. I then painstakingly glue the edges together and hope that it does not fail. And it works! And the rings actually look really nice in my opinion. Puff break! Next, I put his cane together, starting off by painting this wood dowel that I found with a few coats of black acrylic paint and then supergluing it into the apple that I had made earlier. Now, this next segment is the making of his tailcoat. I will say that neither the video, the edit, or the coat is super well made, but I did try my best. I kept forgetting to record, or I was doing it out of frame, or what I did record didn't make sense in the video, so this has been pretty frustrating to edit. But I did manage, I think. And this whole process of making this coat was wonky because I've never made it before, and anytime I would do something, I would change my mind and do it differently, and to be honest, 90% of this jacket was Uhu glued. So while it's not my cleanest work, I am still really proud of how this jacket turned out. So without further ado, here's how I made his tailcoat. I first traced the pattern pieces from 3 layers of fabric and cut them out. Lining, and then I'm gonna sew them double layered. I didn't end up using those lining pieces like I thought I would, but you'll see what I end up actually doing. To start, I sew the back pieces together like I did for the vest, and then the back arm pieces to the sides of the pieces I just did. And it looks like this. What did I write? Editing Emily here. Yeah, I don't know what I was trying to explain, but it's just the side pieces that go on either side of the back panel that I sewed, so yay! I iron the seams flat and then sew the shoulders of the back and front pieces together right sides in. I check my work and then move on to the sleeves. I start off by cutting and sewing the cuffs using the printed fabric from earlier and the red lining fabric. I sew them together right sides in and flip them around to be right sides out. I cut it to length and pin it onto the edge of the sleeves. Again, right sides together and unfinished edges going the same direction. I then measure and repeat that on the other sleeve and then sew them. And they're looking good! Afterwards, I just have to sew them onto the armholes of the bodice, which was awful and painstaking to do. And then I just sew up the sides from the cuff band to the waist. Nobody asked you to do that. That was my Dr. Pepper wall, by the way, which I've since taken down because it kept falling very loudly and it would wake me up at night because my cats would knock it over. Now moving on to the tail of the tailcoat. I take my 2 pattern pieces and sew them together. Oh, it looks like I'm actually gluing the lining in. Okay, so I cut out a single piece of red fabric that I use as the lining instead of the individual ones, and I'm just gluing that in along the inside seam. Also, I did not realize how badly the glue would show through this red fabric. I thought that when it dried it wouldn't be so dark, but it is. For the tail of the coat, I already glued over the edges of the white and the red parts off cam, and oh, I also glued the lining onto it off cam. Alright, it was very time consuming, so it's probably good that it was all off cam. Moving on to the collar. I cut the pieces again from white and red fabric, and I just glue them together. And off cam, again, I make strips of white and this lighter red fabric that I found, and I glue them along the edges of each side of the collar to mimic these edges of the collar. For the lapels, I do the same thing using that lighter red fabric, and I just glue the strips on section by section. This part was also very rough to film and edit, but they're done! I was so worried about how I was gonna make those lapels, but I think they turned out okay, especially for this scale. Afterwards, I sew the collar on, cut and glue down the seam, and cover it with a red strip to camouflage it into the lining. And in the same manner, I also sew, glue, and cover up the tail onto the bodice. So before finishing the coat, I did try it on, and it was just a little bit too big. It just didn't look right. So I don't know if I ruined it or not, but I did try to make it tighter by sewing a seam down the middle again, which made it look kind of frumpy. And I also didn't cover the seam on the inside, but nobody will see it. And now it fits, so nobody looks at the back, right? Can we keep this just between you and me, that the back looks like this? Anyway, to finish the coat, I mark where I need to glue the buttons, and like I did for the vest, glue the buttons to both sides of the chains and glue them onto one side of the coat. They attach to the other side with blue tack, and the coat is finished! And it looks so good! Moving on to an easier part of the outfit, his bow tie. I, of course, didn't film any of the process, but I'll try to explain it now. I just took 2 pieces of black fabric in this shape, and I just sewed them together. And then I cut a little slit in the back of the bow tie so that I could flip it inside out, or right side out, and that's where I'm at in the video here. So I used some leftover yarn fluff from the wig making, and I stuffed the bow tie before hand sewing that slit closed. Next, I cut a strip of the same fabric, fold it a little, and wrap it around the tie fairly tight before sewing the edge in place, and it's looking really good. And finally, I just sew the bow onto the white panel that I glued into the neckline of the vest, and the bow is done. And I also have a little magnet in the middle of the bow for an accessory that he has for his demon form. And we're almost done! Now it's time for his hat. I may or may not remake the brim of this hat in the future, but for now this is what I have. I first take a red and white fabric circle and also a circle of felt, and I glue them to the bottom and top of the felt pieces using some spray adhesive. I then glue the edges of the white fabric down underneath the red all around the brim. And then I glue the red edges down underneath itself, and it looks okay. It's not even and you can see the glue, but again, I might remake it at some point. Next, I glue white fabric onto the hat part that I made off cam. It's the same process for Stolas' hat, so go check out that video after all this one. And I just glued all the edges down and covered the back seam. I then just mark and glue the 2 pieces together. Next, I take a thick strip of folded fabric and I glue one side of that to the back of the hat and wrap it around once. I check how much I need and cut it off. And then I fold the edge toward the inside and glue it down. Then I make his little crown details. Again, using the same foil paper, I cut 3 circles and 3 long triangles, one taller than the others. Then I just glue them on using some Uhu glue, making sure that they're even and in the right spots. Next, I make the little snake that wraps around his hat. I use air dry clay and roll out 2 decently thick strips and wrap them around the hat, making sure the seams are smoothed out. Then I make the little snake head that pokes out of the front and the little tail that pokes out of the back. After the snake has dried, I painted it with a few coats of a metallic gold acrylic paint, and it looks really cool. I also make the apple the same way. Oh, and I also can't forget the snake's little eyes. I just carefully paint them on with black and glue the apple in place. I add magnets to the bottom of the hat and into the wig, and his hat's all finished. Also, I didn't film it, but I did take my steamer that's in my iron and I steamed the brim of the hat into shape, so it gives it that floppy look, but it's not flimsy, if that makes any sense. But anyway, shaping it like that helped a lot with making the hat look a little bit more accurate. We're almost done! The last big thing for his outfit to make is his shoes. This was my first time making shoes, kind of. I've made Hatsune Miku's shoes, but they turned out really bad. But I'm actually really proud of how these turned out. I started out with my pattern and cut that out of this pleather that I found at the thrift store. Amazing find, by the way, and it was a lot of pleather. And then I sew along the front seam right sides in. Then I flatten that seam out by snipping notches and gluing them down. I do the same to the back of the shoe, but only this little part like I did for the pants, so I can add a zipper later. I check the fit and I make these little cardstock bottoms that I blue tack to the bottom of the feet. I put the foot back onto the leg and I cut notches around the base of the shoe and I glue them down onto that cardstock bottom, making sure to glue it as flat as possible. I cut off any excess and use the sides of my hot glue gun to flatten it even more. Next, I glue down the hem of the back of the shoes for the closure, and I glue a cleaned up strip to the inside of the shoe that I fold over and glue down onto the front. And it looks really good! After all the glue is dry, I move on to adding the zipper, which I hot glue first to the bottom, and then I put the shoe onto the doll and glue each side down, making sure that it's nice and tight. Then I take it off, unzip it, and cut the excess. I also add some hot glue to the top edge of the zipper to prevent the zipper handle from coming off. And finally, I can glue the shoe into the shoe base. And the shoes are done! The last tiny final detail that I forgot to add were the buttons that are on the back of Lucifer's tailcoat that I make with pink foil paper, and I just paint it with glittery nail polish and drop some resin on top. And finally, I just glue them onto the back of the coat, and I'd make sure that my hands are covering the entire process so that you can't see any of it. And now the coat is actually finished. And now the moment we've all been waiting for. I can finally put the entire outfit together! This doll was definitely a challenge, and I made a lot of things that I've never made before, but I learned so much and I'm happy with how it came out. And I hope my friend who commissioned him also approves. And here he is! Time for the final photos. Thank you guys so much for watching and sticking through this doozy of a video. Again, so sorry for the wait, but keep a lookout for the next video, which should be his demon form, and it hopefully shouldn't be a 3-month wait this time. I'm not exactly sure just yet what my next doll will be, and I'm also not sure if it'll be Helluverse related. I have something in mind for a close friend, but it's top secret. But anyways, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one, gamers! I formally apologize for the Fortnite accent in multiple parts of this video. If you don't find that funny, my bad. I think it's hilarious. Anyway, goodbye!